Chapter 4. It's the trivial many versus the critical few. Whenever you see a successful business, someone once made a courageous decision. Peter F. Drucker. Let's agree that, in business, it's important to do important things. Conversely, it's not just unimportant to do unimportant things, it is downright destructive because it squanders work, time, people, and other assets that should be devoted to doing important things. These two propositions are valuable because they take you directly to steps 1 and 2 in making just about any business decision. Step 1, decide what is important. Decide what is unimportant. Step 2, do what is important. Avoid what is unimportant. Simple, yes. Now, you only need to know how to decide what is important and what is not. Some aspects of this decision are complex, requiring judgment based on experience, expertise, awareness of relevant technology, innovation, trends, price points, price sensitivities, etc. Factors such as these require market research and deliberative thought. Yet there is a key element in this decision that is strikingly straightforward. It begins with pea plants and pea pods. The lesson of the pea. In Chapter 1, we mentioned Vilfredo Pareto. Born in Paris in 1848, he was what we call a polymath. Everything interested him. His professional life began as a civil engineer, but he also made important contributions to sociology, political science, economics, and philosophy. He always found time for another great passion, gardening. Even polymaths need an escape from the daily grind. But for Pareto, there was no escaping the analytical side of his brain. As he puttered, he couldn't help calculating that just 20% of the pea plants in his garden produced 80% of his healthy pea pods. Through patient observation, he determined that this wasn't a fluke but a general truth, and this realization produced his personal eureka moment. He applied his observation of peas in his back garden to uneven distribution in a vast array of fields. From pea plants, he turned to the distribution of wealth in Italy. Though born in Paris, his family was Genoese, and he spent most of his working life in Italy. He determined that 80% of the nation's land was owned by just 20% of the population. He then turned to the characteristics of industrial production. His calculations revealed that 80% of industrial output came from just 20% of industrial companies. Ultimately, he applied the 80-20 lens to just about every measurably productive human activity and concluded that in any such endeavor, 80% of the results come from just 20% of the action. This is the Pareto Principle, often called the 80-20 rule or principle. If you are more expansive, you can also refer to it as the law of the vital few. If you prefer an even more hard-nosed outlook, you can say that 80-20 separates the critical few from the trivial many. However you put it, the Pareto Principle asserts that a minority of actions, causes, or inputs produces the majority of results, outputs, or rewards. More important for business, the Pareto Principle allows us to translate the words majority and minority into a rough ratio, 80-20. Just how dramatic is this insight? Well, begin by applying it to yourself. Measured by the Pareto Principle, 80% of what you achieve in your job comes from 20% of the time you spend working at it. Put another way, 80% of what you do, 4/5 of your effort, is essentially irrelevant. Ouch. Maybe it will make you feel better when I explain that by you, I mean, one, we, or everybody. For you are not alone. We are all in the same boat. You may find that hard to believe because it contradicts what we expect of ourselves or any reasonably competent worker. But the Pareto Principle should not be taken as a personal criticism. It is based on observation. In everything from the growth of pea plants to the work of laborers, craftsmen, and professionals, there is a built-in imbalance between causes and results, inputs and outputs, efforts and rewards. The 80-20th principle applies to work, markets, customers, products. Virtually every aspect of business. Rather than try to evade or deny it, embrace it, use it, and leverage it to optimize performance and increase your company's competitive edge. Move from measurement to improvement. Executives, managers, and the rank and file often complain about the profusion of reports that cascade through their organization. Maybe there are too many reports. For example, Erwin Knoll, who wrote for the Washington Post in the 1960s and edited The Progressive, an influential magazine and website covering politics and culture, once noted that the New York Department of Mental Hygiene produced and distributed a 3-page illustrated memorandum on how to split an English muffin. But in my experience, the problem is not a superabundance of reports about trivial matters but a plethora of reports that consist of mere measurements. A truly useful report begins with measurement, of course, but concludes by applying measurement to improvement. If more reports that routinely circulate through our businesses were dedicated to achieving improvement rather than simply measuring current conditions and leaving it there, no one would complain about too many reports. The 80-20 principle is based on measurement and intended as a statement of general fact. It is up to executives and managers to take the principle from observation to application, from measurement to improvement. I know it's hard, Ralph Waldo Emerson said so, but thinking is required. If you want tomorrow to be different from today, do something different today. Use 80-20 to show you what to do different. Begin by applying 80-20ths to every aspect of the business, to customers, markets, products, and processes. The purpose is not to observe and call it a day but to identify the truly critical, the vital, and devote your resources to those opportunities. Instead of continuing to input 80% to get 20%, taking resources from what is vital and squandering them on what is irrelevant, improve performance by segmenting your customers and products to ensure that your organization devotes the lion's share of its resources to products and customers that are most productive. Create quartiles. Segmenting customers and products starts with the first foundational tool of 80-20, called a quartile. Quartile setup. The second, more powerful tool, called a quadrant or quad. For both products and customers, start with 1 year of sales, shipments, data. Be sure to include the product, and any important product details, customer, and any important customer details, sales, quantity, cost of the materials used, cost of goods sold will do if material cost is unavailable, and the resulting profit margin. 1. Force rank your products by sales/revenue/turnover. 2. Divide the products into 4 equally sized quartiles, e.g. if you have 1,000 products, each quartile contains 250 products. 3. Summarize each quartile by total revenue, percent of total revenue, margin, percent of margin, maximum product sales, and minimum product sales. 4. Repeat steps 1 through 3 for customers. Typical sales distribution for quartiles 1 through 4 is 89%, 7%, 3%, and 1%. Distributions. Weighted more heavily in quartile 1 suggest greater than average. Complexity. Exercise caution when using a quartile in isolation. I have been part of an 80-20 implementation where we cut the bottom 2 quartiles of products. What happened? We received several love letters from our top customers. Turned out, some of those products were necessary evils, products that must be offered because some of your best customers want them. Quartiles are one-dimensional and tactical but informative. The quads are strategic and powerful. Create quads. The segmentation required to identify your most productive 20% calls for virtually no subjective decision-making. It is a numbers game. To play this game, segment your products and customers into 4 quadrants. Instead of dividing products and customers into 4 quartiles, use the same force-ranked lists to designate each product/customer as A or B. A product/customers, also known as 80s products/customers, are those that cumulatively make up 80% of sales. The rest are BS, or 20s. When you combine the data, you can produce a 2x2 matrix or quad. The top 2 quadrants of this quad consist of your customers and the A and B products they buy. The bottom 2 quads consist of the B customers and the A and B products they buy. Note, B customers buy mostly B products. The game's object is to find or devise ways to treat the bottom 2 quadrants of products and customers differently or eliminate them so that you can free up the company's financial and human assets to concentrate on the top 2. Here's an example. A equals 3,416 customers. B equals 31,419 customers. 1. Total sales equals $429,169,262. Sales percent equals 67.2%. Gross margin equals $211,849,951. GM percent of sales equals 49.4%. Customers equals 248. Products equals 2,692. 2. Total sales equals $82,195,533. Sales percent equals 12.9%. Gross margin equals $5,705,875. GM percent of sales equals 6.9%. Customers equals 233. Products equals 19,866. 3. Total sales equals $83,319,117. Sales percent equals 13.1%. Gross margin equals $39,073,677. GM percent of sales equals 46.9%. Customers equals 1,300. Products equals 1,193. 4. Total sales equals $43,558,715. Sales percent equals 6.8%. Gross margin equals $19,931,076. GM percent of sales equals 45.8%. Customers equals 1,776. Products equals 14,100. Total revenue for 2009 to 2014 was $638,242,627 with a gross margin of $276,560,579. It's the trivial many versus the critical few 49. Quadrant 1 in this example reveals that 248A customers purchased 2,692 products, out of 3,416A products. The Company should, therefore, focus most of its assets and resources on serving these customers and selling these products, which account for 72% of sales, for a gross margin of 49.4%. Quadrant 2 reveals that 233A customers purchased 19,866 out of 31,419 B products. Although A customers are buying more than half of the company's B products, the percentage of total sales is only 12.9%, and the gross margin, GM, is just 6.9%. The company should devote resources accordingly. Quadrant 3 at the bottom left shows that 1,300 B customers purchased 1,193 of 3,416 A products, representing 13.1% of sales, which generates a healthy 46.9 GM percentage. Quadrant 4 shows that 1,776 B customers were the only purchasers of 14,100 B products. These represent a mere 6.8% of sales, though the GM percentage of sales is 45.8%. Growth through simplification. Analysis of your customer data and product data is aimed at segmenting customers and products into 4 quadrants so that you can identify your best customers and best products in terms of revenue and GM. This enables the second step in segmentation, simplification, reducing complexity in areas important to the business's success. Essentially, you want to focus more resources on the most productive quadrant, Quadrant 1, by identifying your top customers and moving heaven and earth to serve them, selling them the A products they want most. Your greatest opportunity for growth is in selling more A products to more A customers. Secondarily, you will want to focus on Quadrant 2, the B products that A customers buy. There are often opportunities to simplify Quadrant 2 with mutual benefit to your business and the customer. As for the bottom 2 quadrants, which contain B customers, the strategy is to devote fewer resources to these less productive customers and less profitable products. This is the goal of simplification. It typically involves reducing the number of SKUs on offer, eliminating unproductive ones, and perhaps reducing the number of models in a given product line, especially in Quadrant 4. Very importantly, simplification involves diverting your human resources, especially sales personnel, from lengthy interactions with marginally productive B customers. Will reducing or eliminating personal selling to low-performing B customers mean that you will lose these customers? Yes, at least some of them. And while this sounds like a bad thing, counterintuitive or even malpractice, these are customers you want to lose. Servicing them reduces the company's capacity to serve your best customers, sell your best products, cultivate more A customers, and create even more A products. The imperative is to prevent your organization from devoting precious resources to improving parts of the business that make little or no positive impact on the business. In business, less is often more. A key lever of performance improvement is reducing, simplifying, the sheer number of products the business offers. While it is very important to identify the 20% of products that produce the most revenue, it is even more important to identify the larger number, 80%, of products that produce a mere 20% of revenue. These bottom quadrant products create unproductive complexity and force the business to spread its resources thin, directing vital assets away from the A products. Profitability is reduced. You lose money by spending more than you take in. Similarly, as you identify the vital 20% of customers who are your best customers, you must identify the bottom 20%. To put it bluntly but urgently, you do not want these Customers, unless you can retain them with minimal effort and at a worthwhile profit margin. You can require your bottom quadrant customers to place orders only through the website, without intervention from human sales personnel. You can require payment in full upfront by credit or debit card. You can place minimum order requirements to ensure that your handling costs are covered. You can charge for shipping, fire products and fire customers. The Pacific Theater in World War II presented General Douglas MacArthur with a daunting array of military objectives. The Japanese armed forces held an overwhelming number of Pacific islands, and MacArthur had limited ships, men, and weapons to deal with them. So, he made a bold decision. Fight selectively. Instead of trying to capture every Japanese-held island in sequence on the way to the Japanese home islands, strike only at some of the links in the chain and bypass the others, no matter how heavily fortified. By breaking the vital links, those islands left alone would be cut off from their supply chains. They would, as MacArthur put it, wither on the vine. Starved, they would surrender or die, without the necessity of being beaten into submission by force. By focusing on the key links in the island chains, the progress of counterattacks could be sped up and the loss of men and material reduced. MacArthur applied the principle of simplification, which included disregarding certain island objectives. The same strategy applies to simplifying your business. If you cannot eliminate loss or create meaningful profit with any product, customer, or category of products and customers, fire the product, the customer, or both. I understand that such actions go against the grain of common sense. We naturally assume that if some is good, many is better. And we believe the old saying, the customer is always right, as if it had been delivered from the heavens on a blinding bolt of lightning. Moreover, this outright discrimination just doesn't seem fair. Treating people fairly is important in business, government, and life. But first, you must define fair. For instance, is it fair to you, your company, your employees, and your customers to compromise quality, service, pricing, and profitability by treating all customers equally? It is fair to do this only if you mistakenly believe that fair and equal are synonymous. But they are not, and the strategic objective of 80/20ths is not to treat everything and everyone equally but fairly. The fairest thing you can do in business is grow and become better. It benefits every stakeholder, including customers. A business does not grow and improve by devoting 80% of its resources to the bottom 20% of its products and customers. Albert Einstein said, "Common sense is nothing more than a deposit of prejudices laid down in the mind before you reach 18. As pilots flying in low visibility know that they must trust their instruments over their senses, we in business need to ensure that we think more maturely and sophisticatedly than we did at age 18. We need to look at the numbers and trust the numbers. The 80/20ths principle will show you not just what products and customers you can live without but those you cannot live with. These products and customers bleed the lifeblood out of the business. Unprofitable in and of themselves. They also draw your capital and human assets away from the top quadrant products and customers responsible for 80% of whatever success you enjoy.